This week on Vaticano, meet the Vatican's track and field team and an old friend of Padre Pio. But first, follow Pope Francis through his apostolic trip to 3 African nations. For this and more, Vaticano starts now. During his 4th apostolic visit to the African continent, the Holy Father visited Mozambique, Madagascar, and Mauritius. 7 days, 3 countries, under one key theme: peace. EWTN Special Envoy Edward Penton was also on board, reporting on every step of the trip.
The main point of the Pope going to Mozambique was really for peace and reconciliation after the civil war from 1977 to 95. There's been a kind of fragile peace since then. There was an accord last month in August, and the Pope was really keen to preserve that peace accord and to encourage them to continue to strive for peace. So that was the main issue, but he also discussed, of course, the issues of poverty. Something like 80% of the Mozambique population don't have enough to eat, or they're malnourished, and so there's serious poverty questions there, but also the environment too. He was also concerned about deforestation in Mozambique, and he wanted to draw attention to that as well. So there were three aspects to the visit in Mozambique. Before the Pope's visit in March and April, there was 2 big cyclones and damaged a lot of parts, particularly in the north of the country. And the Pope really wanted to draw attention to that, as well as other environmental issues. He was given a cross made out of wood from a collapsed house from a woman who died in the cyclone. And there was also crosses etched onto the cross, little crucifixes made of sheet metal from the roof of the house. So that was very poignant and symbolic of the suffering that Mozambicans had felt through those couple of cyclones. Well, I think throughout this trip, it was interesting how the people lined the routes. Lots of people turned out to see the Pope. They were jubilant, they were very happy to see him. And you saw everybody from all ages, all walks of life, gathering to see him and lining the routes to see him and watch him come past. And
important moment in this time to make a peace, reconciliation with both these peoples. It's a good moment.
it was a huge event for these people. They didn't expect probably the Pope to come to Africa. It's his 4th trip to Africa, but so they were very, very excited by his visit. In Madagascar, he celebrated in front of 1 million people turned up for that Mass. And the Pope, again, sort of drew attention to the issues of poverty and how it's important to deal with that issue and to help bring people out of poverty. But he was really very concerned about the situation of Madagascans and how they are treated, really, and the fact that they are very poor.
Important for the visit of the Pope here, for all communities and all the population, is to regain the faith, because they are a bit little down,
Right.
and to get also some encouragement in life.
Yes.
And it is a very important person, even for those who are not Catholic.
Yes, right.
Because this is an image of peace and justice.
The highlight of the trip, I think, was his visit to this charity founded by Father Father Opeka, which was really a very interesting visit because Father Opeka had arrived in Madagascar in 1970. He's an Argentinian born of Slovenian parents, and he felt he couldn't be indifferent to the poverty that he saw in Madagascar. It's one of the poorest, if not the poorest country in the world that's not suffering from conflict. So there's a lot of need there. And what he did was he set up in 1989 a charity aimed at really helping not just give handouts to the poor, but really give them a hand up and to really help them by giving them a stake in development. And they actually build their own houses, they have their own shelter, they build dispensaries, and schools as well. And they've created these kind of villages, which are really a kind of showcase for what can be done to help the poor. So it was a very interesting meeting, and he had got a huge reception when Father Opeka met the Pope. In fact, Father Opeka, I think, got a bigger reception than the Pope. They love him very much there for what he's done. He was actually a student of Pope Francis, Cardinal, or Jorge Bergoglio, as he then was, in the 1960s. He was actually a theology student of Jorge Bergoglio. So it was a very interesting thing, and actually the Pope mentioned that when he arrived. He said he never wanted to study, but he wanted to work instead, and that made the people laugh. What was really interesting about that visit to Mauritius was not just the exuberance and the jubilant crowds who were very excited, like all of them, but the great ethnicity, the variations of ethnicity of the people. They come from all over the world there. There's a real melting pot of different ethnicities, and the Pope really appreciated that, and he actually said on the plane coming back that it was a great sort of showcase for interreligious coexistence. Blessed Laval is a very popular figure in Mauritius because he helped rehabilitate former slaves. So the Mauritians see him as very much someone to intercede for them. They have this shrine for him, and so the Pope really wanted to honor him there. And I think there was very much part of his whole visit was to show, the rehabilitation of those who are destitute or poor, and Father Laval personified that in many ways. Well, I think one of the most interesting things about this trip was the reception the Pope received was extremely warm and excited.
Viva il Papa! Viva il Papa! Viva il Papa! Viva il Papa!
And the huge number of people who turned out to see him.
We have no words to describe the joy that we are today, and something that we can't see only on TV. He's next to us. It's a very special moment for me.
And I think it shows the growth of the faith in the continent of Africa, and the fact that I like to say that people think the faith is going south in the West. Well, in a sense it is going south, but in a good sense, because it's building up very much in the south, in parts of Africa. And they see Francis as a breath of fresh air because he's not the usual white European, as they often say, but he's actually someone from the south like them. And so they feel that they can identify more with him for that reason.
Sports at the Vatican. Meet the Vatican's track and field athletes after the break. Did you know that the Vatican City has its own track and field team? The squad includes Swiss guards, members of the Roman Curia, and Vatican employees with their families. The project was officially launched last January and has grown up to 80 members. Walking around St. Peter's Square, it's easy to recognize their bright yellow jerseys with the Vatican logo. They are Atletica Vaticana.
I'm very happy. It's an honor for me because I'm Catholic, of course, and I'm also sporty. I like sport very much. I used to play soccer when I was a child, and I run now. So Catholicism and the sport together, it's wonderful for me. Faith helps to run well, and run helps to pray well.
Io ho cominciato atletica leggera a 14 anni e ho vinto anche un...
I started athletics when I was 14. I also won an Italian title in the 3,000 meter, which is my specialty. My father is an employee of the Vatican, so I had this opportunity to enter Vatican athletics, which for me, knowing the employees, is like a family. They are not only training companions, it's a big family.
Per me. Sono solo compagni di allenamento e è una grande famiglia.
We are now about 70-80 persons, so we are a lot of persons, but not just in Rome, also in all the world, because we have religious from Canada, from America, from Australia.
Camille and Sara are exercising just a few blocks away from the Vatican at the Castel Sant'Angelo Garden. They're staying in shape to represent the Vatican in upcoming sporting events.
For instance, there will be the Via Pacis Marathon on September 22nd. I will do the 5-kilometer race. This year, I will not do the half marathon. I did it last year. I came in second. But this year, I will do 5 kilometers.
My dream is to go to the Olympic Games, of course.
A Vatican team participated in the Winter Olympic Games in South Korea in 2018, and the Atletica Vaticana will be among the participants at the Summer Olympic Games in Tokyo in 2020. The Holy See delegation at the UN in Geneva denounced pieces of the recent report at the panel about the state monopoly on education, but agreed on the bottom line that the states are to respect the liberty of parents to choose for their children schools other than those established by the public authorities. After the event, Archbishop Ivan Jurkovic explained to EWTN the position of the Holy See on the right to education.
In certain places, and sometimes also because of international regulations, we have an idea that the ideal partner for the education should be state. The Holy See and the Catholic Church does not agree. The Holy See thinks that society is richer if we have more different variety in the education, and it means no state and state. We don't speak only about the private education, because the church education, let's say education in Catholic schools, is not a private education, it's an institutional education. Another thing is if it's other private education that have different systems. So it means we stay behind that the family would have possibility to choose among many possibilities to have a richer society and richer mankind because of a variety of education, and also underscores the state and other institutions to coordinate all the efforts in the field of education.
Article 26 says that everyone has the right to an education, so let's put that into action.
We need to help children get an education.
The UN Secretary General has created a global initiative that intends to increase the outreach and engagement on global citizenship education and to focus on learning and teaching for sustainable development.
The basic statement of the United Nations document about education is Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was developed later on also in a Convention on Rights of Child and other conventions. Again, what we would like to improve, we would like to draw attention also to the United Nations that education is not a profit-making business. Education is not a trade. It's not a business in terms, although it is also, how to say, as any activity, human activities brings also positive results. So we would like to have the education that would be always concentrated on the needs of the people, not on other aspects that are also important. So the Pope would like to attract this attention. We have millions and millions, probably hundreds of millions of young people who have no education. They have no money to pay, but we have to educate them.
Around the world, more than 58 million children are not allowed or can't attend school today.
Girls are less likely to attend school than boys because girls are at a higher risk of being attacked when going to school, and families have a harder time affording their uniforms.
In some countries, children are actually put in danger if they try to attend school. A total of 258,115 kids are kidnapped a year for trying to attend school.
The Catholic Church, and probably many other religious organizations, but also other organizations, have means. It will be insufficient education probably, but it is still an education. So we have to avoid that education could be only a source of profit making. And although it is such a personal responsibility, also some institutions think that it can be outsourced. So you find a private contractor that takes care of your responsibility, and then also responsibility falls to the private contractor. So it means we would like to have education really at the core concern of the United Nations for the mankind, especially for the millions, and probably hundreds of millions of young people in the world that have not access to education.
The Holy See is against a one-size-fits-all model and believes that the manner in which the UN report refers to international legally binding obligations to states cannot but raise serious concerns. After the break, meet Father Marciano Mora, a Capuchin priest who spent 20 years with Padre Pio. Father Marciano Mora is the last living Capuchin in San Giovanni Rotondo who knew Padre Pio. He now lives in a friary where he stayed alongside Padre Pio for 20 years and where he met him for the first time.
Qual è stata la mia prima esperienza di
What was my first impression of seeing Padre Pio face to face?
Di un nonno.
It was of a grandfather who is with his grandchildren.
Mi ricordo che
I remember that while we were reunited with Padre Pio, we found ourselves passing through the Friar bursar of the convent, the one who thinks about the expenses, etc., the one who pays the costs.
Padre Pio lo vede e dice,
Padre Pio told him, I recommend you make them eat well. This is meat that grows. They must eat well. Like a grandfather who is worried about his grandchildren. This is the most beautiful scene I remember.
Questa è la scena più bella che io ricordo.
Padre Pio was very famous for his confessions, and thousands of people would travel to San Giovanni Rotondo to receive the sacrament of reconciliation from him. Even today, his confessional is full of requests for graces and prayer intentions. Father Marciano tells us how powerful the experience with Padre Pio was.
After he gave us a few words in his confession, he then gave us absolution with suffering.
Io ti assolvo nel nome del Padre.
Then they explained to us that Padre Pio took our sins on his shoulders.
Che Padre Pio si prendeva sulle sue spalle I nostri peccati.
Padre Pio not only endured spiritual sufferings, he actually physically suffered with Christ, receiving the stigmata.
Pensavo, beato Padre Pio.
I thought, bless Padre Pio, bless him, because he has the stigmata. You know what it means to have the stigmata? Blessed is he.
Una mattina io servo la messa, ritorno in sacrestia.
One morning he served Mass, returned to the sacristy, and before putting on his glove, he gave me his hand to kiss.
La porto alle labbra.
I took it slowly, brought it to my lips. I took it slowly to see better.
Una grande crosta di sangue.
A large crust of blood where it was broken and interrupted. There the blood could be seen.
Allora, io bacio la mano e la do a un signore che era a fianco a me.
So I kissed the hand and gave it to a man who was next to me. Padre Pio let it happen. This man did not expect this gesture. He took Padre Pio's hand and, out of devotion, squeezed it. At that moment, Padre Pio jumped off the ground, shouting, "You're hurting me, you're hurting me." Then I understood that the stigmata was not for glory, but a source of suffering.
Non erano una gloria, ma erano fonte di sofferenza.
These sufferings, though, were the source of Padre Pio's power to perform miracles and healings. To underscore this, Father Marciano recalls the healing of his father from lung cancer.
Io dico a Padre Pio, Padre, le presento.
I said to Padre Pio, "Father, I introduce to you my father, who has an illness in his lungs. Father, pray for him."
E Padre Pio fa un gesto mai fatto nella sua vita.
And Padre Pio made a gesture that he had never done in his life. Never. He took my father by the lapel of his jacket and with the other hand began to punch my father's chest.
Comincia a tirare tanti pugni sul petto di mio padre. Chi ti ha detto che tu stai malato?
Who told you were sick? You are fine. We all laughed watching this scene, and Padre Pio continued, "Who told you that you are sick? You look good. You are fine."
Tu stai bene, tu stai bene.
He left, and we laughed, and then we also left. My father is not dead.
E mio padre non è morto. È morto dopo 16 anni.
He died after 16 years of another illness. Then I asked my father, "But when Padre Pio punched you, did you feel pain?"
Tu ti facevi male. Ma sì che mi faceva male, perché mi dava i pugni veramente.
Of course, it hurt me, because he really punched me. Now, if my father got hurt, Padre Pio had to get hurt too, because he had sores. Padre Pio had also hurt himself, and the grace of miracle is caused by the pain of Padre Pio. Because miracles, graces, are not given as gifts. You pay with the suffering of a saint.
Le grazie non si regalano, si pagano con la sofferenza di un santo.
Padre Pio's life was mystical and very peculiar in many aspects. Father Marciano's last meeting with Padre Pio was actually quite strange.
A un certo momento Padre Pio si ferma, si blocca.
And at a certain point, Padre Pio froze. He stopped. He didn't say anything. His eyes were on me.
E non si muove più.
He wasn't moving. I stood there, not knowing what to do. With these big eyes, Padre Pio was staring at me.
Quell'era il momento della scrutazione della coscienza, cioè leggeva dentro.
That was a moment of scrutiny of the conscious, that is, when he reads inside what I had within. I'm convinced that he saw inside me.
Sono convinto che mi ha visto dentro.
Because I immediately afterwards stopped all other activities. Over 25 years, I've worked exclusively for Padre Pio, traveling the whole world through Padre Pio's prayer groups. He spoke to me without speaking to me. He spoke to me with his eyes.
Vi t'ho detto, mi ha parlato senza parlare, mi ha parlato con gli occhi.